Tanse, I'm Kristanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Roger Bilodeau was convicted of 2 counts of manslaughter in the 2020 shooting deaths of Jacob Sansom and Maurice Cardinal. On Wednesday, he was denied full parole by the Parole Board of Canada. Bilodeau was handed a 10-year sentence in 2022 for his role in the deaths of the 2 Métis hunters. In March of 2020, Bilodeau and his son Anthony pursued Cardinal and Sansom for 7 kilometers in a high-speed chase, incorrectly identifying the hunters as thieves. Anthony shot both men and left them for dead. He was convicted of second-degree murder and manslaughter and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole until 2036. The family of the hunters said they were pleased with the Parole Board's decision.
You know, you get this heavy feeling in your stomach. You just feel sick to your stomach because you know that our statements, the words we speak, the pain we feel is not going to be heard. However, today was a little bit different. The parole board members that they had today were compassionate, and they actually heard our words. They felt our pain.
That makes me really happy. It makes me feel like we were heard, even with all the Roger not taking accountability for his actions. And so, yes, I'm happy.
With a number of Mi'kmaq leaders behind him, Liberal MP Jaime Battiste announced in Halifax this morning that he will run for leader of the Liberal Party, and that he passed the first hurdles of running by securing 300 signatures and a $50,000 deposit. Battiste plans on making history by becoming the first Indigenous Prime Minister. Today's announcement comes as a last-ditch effort from Battiste as the deadline to run for Liberal Party leader ends today. Battiste says he has been on the phones every morning looking for more support and donations, and he is asking the public to sign up as a Liberal Party supporter and continue donating to him. Battiste says he wants to continue to support reconciliation efforts, the National Food Program, affordable childcare, dental care, and pharmacare. And if he becomes Prime Minister, he would reset the negotiations of the multi-billion-dollar child welfare reform settlement and finish the work of the First Nations Clean Water Act.
Well, I think that we need a Prime Minister who's going to be able to reach across the floor and get buy-in from at least one party to continue the important work that I've talked about, not just the First Nations Clean Water legislation, which I tried to get to Senate by unanimous consent. The Conservatives said no to that, despite working very collaboratively in committee with them on all of the issues that they had said. But there's a lot of important legislation. There's also the $48 billion negotiation that is currently off the table. I think that my first steps as a Prime Minister would be to reach across to the NDP, to the Bloc, and to try to figure out if there is an appetite to ensure that these key legislation pieces move forward.
So far, former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is in the lead for the Liberal Party leader race, followed by former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. Our reporter Angel Moore will have more on Battiste's announcement later today in our evening newscast. United States President Donald Trump's second term in office began on Monday. One of his administration's first tasks will be opening a sensitive portion of a wildlife refuge in Alaska to oil and gas development. Sarah Connors tells us how Indigenous groups and environmentalists with vested interests in the refuge are reacting to the news.
The 45th and the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump wasted no time getting down to business during his inauguration address on Monday.
We will drill, baby, drill.
It came as no surprise during his administration's first day, he issued an executive order to tap into Alaska's resource potential.
Yes, sir. This is an executive order relating to unleashing Alaska's potential as an energy reservoir for the entire nation.
And what about?
I think all of us are feeling very stressed.
Trump's agenda could have major implications for the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and those who want to see it protected. The nearly 20 million acre refuge is located in northeast Alaska, some of which is not permanently protected. That includes the coastal plain, which acts as vital calving grounds for the porcupine caribou herd, an area the Gwich'in in Alaska and northern Canada consider sacred. The Vuntut Gwich'in in northern Yukon says any drilling in the refuge will affect their way of life.
That will change drastically if we don't have caribou, because we are caribou people.
But Trump is eager to delve into Alaska's oil reserves at any cost. His executive order rolls back many Biden-era environmental protections for the refuge. That includes reinstating drilling leases within the refuge that were canceled by the Biden administration in 2023.
Everybody knew pretty much that something like this would come out.
But this conservation group says oil and gas companies aren't interested in the refuge. A second mandated drilling lease sale earlier this month received 0 bids.
Insurance companies internationally have pulled out. Banks don't want to support it. It's just bad business.
The group also says the Trump administration doesn't have the manpower needed to execute the order during his term.
Even if they do start to do work, it would take 10 years before we even saw any of the fruition of that work.
So we're looking forward to an opportunity to see that coastal plain opened.
But Inupiat communities on Alaska's northern slope say drilling in the refuge can unlock economic benefits. The Inupiat have the ability to tax infrastructure on their land, which helps fund the local economy. They say their views are often left out of decisions when it comes to the refuge.
They're feeling forgotten because nobody ever mentions them, and they are the closest and rely on a lot of the same animals that are relied on by the communities to the south.
But for the Vuntut Gwich'in, the protection of the caribou is paramount.
We have to really honor our fundamental relationship with the land and the caribou, and we have to protect that at all costs.
Trump also declared a national energy emergency during his first day in office. The declaration criticizes the U.S. current energy infrastructure while also calling for increased oil and gas drilling. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
We now want to tell you about this week's web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, are you concerned about U.S. tariffs on Canada's economy? Your answers are very concerned, somewhat concerned, not concerned, or unsure. And you can go to our website at www.aptnnews.ca to cast your ballot. On the East Coast, where a Wolastoqey family is outraged after a nurse admitted to refusing to visit their loved one in his home. The reason given was that it was after dark and that he resided in an Indigenous community. Angel Moore has that story.
Trina Hafke talks about her dad, Leo William Francis.
And this is his smile, and my dad lived for his grandchildren. All of them. It doesn't matter if they were extended or not. Those were his pride and joy.
Francis was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2020, and he was spending his final days at home with his family in his community, the Nugudkuk First Nation.
Dad didn't want to go because he wanted to live out the remainder of his time at home. He didn't want to be in hospital where any invasive procedures would happen. He just wanted to be able to die peacefully.
Hafke is the youngest of 5 siblings. She was living with her father to take care of him. On the night of September 10th, 2023, her father experienced respiratory distress. So she called New Brunswick's home health care program that provides health services in homes to request a home visit from the on-call nurse. To Hafke's surprise, she refused to enter the community.
I wasn't sure what I had heard. I didn't think I heard that. I wanted to clarify. I've never experienced discrimination like this ever. So I asked again. I just said, so you're saying you don't want to come into my community after dark in the middle of the night? And she said, well, yeah, in the middle of the night.
Instead, the on-call nurse suggested paramedics attend.
Because they can come in pairs and I'm not supposed to go alone. Should have raised a red flag, didn't, because I've never experienced this type of situation before.
That same night, the paramedics took Francis to the hospital, where Francis became unconscious. Later that day, he was sent home. 4 days later, Francis died, but he never regained consciousness.
by her refusing to come into the community that evening, she took that choice away from my dad, and she took that choice away from me. And so I take that really hard.
Nagoodcook is located in New Brunswick, near the Maine border, about 150 kilometers northwest of Fredericton. With about 2,500 people, the community has a health center that provides services such as primary health care, but they don't have the staff to provide 24-hour care. Dina Sapier is a health director. She says this incident could have been prevented.
So the province has, a duty to respond to our communities, and if they feel that there's a safety issue for whatever reason, and I know Trina's family, there's no safety issue there. They have to communicate that with us, and we have to come and discuss, plans to move forward and how to mitigate that.
Chief Ross Purley says safety is not the issue.
Our community is not any less safer than the town of Perth Andover. Our community isn't less safer than the town of Grand Falls. But because this type of these type of views are allowed in the system, and the program doesn't make those types of changes, that's the problem.
Hafke filed a complaint with the Nurses Association of New Brunswick on October 31st, 2024. The Complaints Committee released their decision where the nurse admitted to refusing to visit a patient in respiratory distress at his residence after dark to perform an assessment because his residence was in an Indigenous community. The nurse also admitted violating New Brunswick's nursing standards and ethics that stipulates that nurses must refrain from discriminating based on a person's race, ethnicity, culture, place of origin, or any other attribute. Purley doesn't blame the nurse, but systemic racism in New Brunswick healthcare. He hopes to work with the provincial government to make things better.
So where we go from here, I'm hoping the new government changes their unwritten policies and make sure that Indigenous people all over the province get the equal services that they deserve and have a right to.
The Nursing Association of New Brunswick suspended the nurse for 2 months. She must take remedial education related to Indigenous reconciliation awareness, and she was made aware that there are no restrictions on visiting a community at any time. She also apologized to the family, although indirectly. Hafke says that is not enough.
It was my hope that her license would be revoked. It was my hope that she would no longer be able to practice.
Home care spokesperson Christina Wollaston said in a statement to APTN News they cannot comment on details regarding human resources matters, but any concerns are thoroughly investigated. The Nurses Association of New Brunswick interim CEO Kate Shepherd said they are committed to ensuring equitable and culturally safe care for all individuals. In the meantime, Hafke and her siblings have contacted a lawyer to discuss their legal options. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Nagoodcook First Nation.
Coming up next, we will bring you an update on the Megan Gallagher trial in Saskatoon. We're back in about 3 minutes. Welcome back. After 4.5 years, the family of Megan Gallagher must wait a bit longer for justice after a water main break shut down Saskatoon's Court of King's bench on Wednesday, delaying the sentencing of 2 people convicted for their roles in her case. Cheyenne Petitus and Summer Sky Henry were supposed to be sentenced after pleading guilty to manslaughter in Megan Gallagher's 2020 death. The courtroom was full, but sentencing was delayed. Justice Mona Dovell said she will deal with a challenge to a sweeping publication ban on most aspects of the case next week on January 29th. The CBC and the Saskatoon Star-Phoenix are both behind the challenge. Sentencing has now been rescheduled to February 6th. Brian Gallagher is Megan's father.
We were all ready. We had our victim impact statements ready to go, and we've been rehearsing them. And it's a process of planning and going through that. It doesn't happen overnight. That process of a victim impact statement probably needs at least 3 or 4 days just to get your thoughts together, and then to present it. It takes a lot of courage to stand up there and express those words.
It's Thursday today, and that means we have another new episode of Nation to Nation. Fraser Needham joins us now from Ottawa. Fraser.
Coming up later tonight after the news, the federal government and 15 Northern Ontario First Nations released a roadmap on what should be done on development of an area known as the Ring of Fire. Neskantaga First Nation Chief Chris Munius is here to give us his thoughts. Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States this week. Jordan Bennett-Biguet of ICT News joins us to talk about what Native Americans think. And Doug Cuthand is a longtime columnist with the Saskatoon Star-Phoenix. He's here to talk about Justin Trudeau's legacy when it comes to Indigenous people in Western Canada. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. And you can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. TikTok superstar Kyron Potts is up next to give you some tips on how you can start your own social media presence. That interview when we come back in about 3 minutes. Stick around.
Cloud -10, Halifax, sunny and -6. Nain -21, and Ujuak -15. Saguenay -13, Quebec City -12. Toronto -6, Sault Ste. Marie -11. Sioux Lookout -19, Thunder Bay sunny and -20. Churchill -15, Thompson -15. -16 in Princess Harbor, Barons River -16. Yorkton -11, Regina -9. Meadow Lake -5, La Ronge -12. -7 in Fort Chipewyan, high level -1. -2 in Calgary, Red Deer -3. -1 in Kamloops, Campbell River 4. 2 in Fort Nelson, Smithers -1. 1 in Old Crow, -2 in Rock River. Wrigley -13, Watee -3. -2 in Colville Lake, Polituck -5. Whale Cove -18, Baker Lake -16. And Arctic Bay -27, Aglulik -23.
Two-Spirit Indigenous influencer and actor Kyron Potts of Edmonton has been a rising star on social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. He has made social media content a full-time job and writing and producing various sketches about being Indigenous and Two-Spirit and sharing a lot of his humor that resonates with so many of his followers. When he's not creating content, he's an advocate for supporting Indigenous artists and also providing his expertise through public speaking engagements across Turtle Island. Kyron Potts recently spoke to us from Edmonton. Here's that interview. Kyron, thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's been 3 years since we last spoke with you. That's a lot of time to go by, especially in the social media world. Can you talk to us about what your journey has been like for you from when you began on social media to now?
Well, one of the biggest changes is that I was bald last time you guys interviewed me, so I got hair now, which is pretty cool. But over the last 3 years, 3 years is a long time in social media world. It's like dog years. It's been a roller coaster. There's been so much that's happened. I think I've quintupled my following. I've traveled the world. I've been in TV shows. I've hosted massive events, and I've kind of transformed as a storyteller, which I think is the most important thing.
That's awesome. That's great. And I'm sure TikTok and social media has helped you along that journey, hey?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great tool.
Can you talk about where you get the ideas to write all these funny videos? I loved your Indigenous Sex in the City skits.
Oh, those are all exactly the same ways that my aunties in my real life are. And so when people ask me who's my biggest inspiration, it's always my aunties. They're such characters. They're natural comedians without even trying. And I really like to reimagine popular media in a way that has that little bit of like rank kind of res humor behind it, because it's really important for our young people especially to be able to laugh at ourselves and to be able to be the ones to control that narrative of humor. And so, you know, Carrie Bradshaw, she gets reimagined as somebody who doesn't drink Cosmos, but maybe has a twisted tea and doesn't wear Manolo Blanc's shoes. Maybe she wears moccasins, you know?
Yeah, I love it. We all have aunties like that. Kyron, for our Indigenous youth out there, what are some tips you can provide for them if they want to start creating a social media presence online but don't know where to start?
I love this question so much. Every time I talk to young people, I'm always telling them, if you feel like you can't do it, just try. You'll never know. My biggest piece of advice is to be authentic. To be the same person you are on the camera as you are in your day-to-day life. People can smell when people are not authentic and being themselves. They can tell when they're putting on a character. So be yourself, and if you want it to be a job, treat it like a job. Dedicate some time to it. Wake up, get a routine. You don't need a bunch of crazy equipment. All you need is a cell phone. Think outside the box and post. Consistency is key. I was posting 7 videos a day when I wanted to start my content career, and it's teetered off a little bit, but it definitely was how I got my start, is just overwhelming the algorithm with videos of me being crazy.
That's awesome. And I also want to ask you about the recent US ban of TikTok. Did that impact you in any way or any of your friends in the US?
Absolutely. Most of my audience is from the US. I think about 65% of my audience. And so it's obviously unfortunate. There's a lot of, I'm thinking of all the small businesses and all of the artists who make a living promoting their businesses on TikTok. And so they're the ones who are going to be hurt the most. But I also feel bad because it means that there's no more representation for all of our Southern Indigenous relatives. And many of them are going to have to find other ways to migrate to other platforms in order to continue telling their stories and supporting themselves. So definitely really disappointing.
Finally, Kyron, I have another question for you. Do you have any words of advice for our Indigenous youth who are struggling out there, or any words of advice for our Two-Spirit Indigenous youth who are struggling out there?
Yeah, absolutely. You are a gift from the Creator, first and foremost. You're so important and needed. And the sun is going to rise tomorrow. It's going to be so beautiful, and you should be alive to witness it.
I love that. Kyron, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeshnish, thanks for having me.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Thursday, January 23rd. Dennis Ward is back for your evening newscast. Make sure to join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, thank you for watching. We'll see you again next day.